Okay, here we are. It's a 2003 Chevy Suburban. It's a 1500 5.3 liter engine. I think the same engine is in Silverados and Yukons and lots of different Chevy makes and models and GMC. So what we got here is the water pump. I believe is leaking. It came out one day and there was coolant all over the ground. So we're going to confirm that it's a water pump, and then we're going to replace it. The very first thing we're going to do is get access to the water pump. So I'm going to come down here, actually right here. There will be the 10 millimeter screw here and here. There's two of them. Remove those. Also, there's quite a few pop rivets down here. This is the shroud that goes around the fan, and the pop rivets look like this. So you just take your tool like this, or you can use a flathead screwdriver, whatever you have available, and just pop them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 6 of those, and then the two 10 millimeter bolts there. Once you got that done, you're going to take your intake off. So you can use a flathead here, or a 10 mil, excuse me, an 8 mil will also work. So there and here. So to get access to that, take this cover off here. I think that's also an 8 mil, I believe. Let's see. Yep, it's 8 mil. So there's just one screw there, and it pops off like this. So now you have access to your clamp. So flathead or 8 mil will go there. And just loosen that up. Okay, now you have all that stuff removed. This is your water pump right here. You can't see through the camera, but it's really wet right here, and it's dripping down, and there's a big puddle underneath because this car's been sitting here for a couple of weeks. So it's definitely a bad water pump. So we're going to replace that. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to drain all the coolant. Alright, to flush the coolant, let's see, there is the drain plug right here. You just twist it with your hand. It should come right out. And make sure you have a bucket or something under there to catch all the coolant. Oh, because here it comes. Looks like there was only water in there. Alright. And it really helps. You have this tool here. And take the clamps off if you don't. If you don't have this tool, you can use some sort of a pliers or something. Draining. Alright, while the coolant is draining, we'll remove this upper radiator hose. Just clamp here and here, and just remove them. And one goes to the radiator, and the other one goes to the water pump. So you want to go ahead and remove those. Alright, next step is you want to take this fan assembly off of the pulley from the water pump. So you got an adjustable wrench, goes down in there. It's a pretty big nut, and you just want to break that free. You can smack it with a hammer, or you can put a pipe on it like that for some leverage and loosen it up. Alright, so you're gonna have to have something to keep this from spinning while you're turning it. So just put a C-clamp on there, and clamp the pulley, and I kind of wedged it to where it wouldn't rotate, and then it breaks pretty easily after that. And then once you have it broken, you can take this clamp back off and just spin it by hand. Just spin it by hand and it'll come completely off. There it is. All right. Now there's some more hoses attached to the water pump. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and take those off. They probably have some fluid in them as well, so make sure you have something under there to catch that. This one looks like your lower radiator hose. So once you have the clamp loose, here, just might have to wiggle it a little bit. You just pour it out right there. Let's see, the other two, it looks like this one's coming from your reservoir going in, and maybe a supply and return for your heater. So looks like somebody has replaced these maybe before, so they don't have the original clamps on them. So just loosen the clamps and just yank them off. Okay, next step is you want to remove the belt now. You gotta, let's see, what is this? 15 millimeter. This is the tensioner right here, so just put your 15 mil over top of the tensioner. Pull the tensioner back, and once you pull it back, you can see it slacks up the hose, or excuse me, the belt, and you can just pull the belt off. So I need 2 hands for that, so I'll go ahead and take the belt off now. Next, you want to remove the tensioner completely. So that's 3 15 millimeter bolts. So 1, 2, and 3. So 15 mils, take those out, and then the tensioner will pull off. All right, now it's time to remove the water pump. So there's 6 bolts. 1, 2, 3. And on the other side, 1, 2, 3. Back there. Not this one, not that one. Back behind it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. They're all 10 mils, and it's important that you put them all back in the same spot when you return them, when you put on the new pump, to make sure that all the links are correct and you don't damage your engine. I think they're all the same size, but it's just good practice to make sure that you take this one out, and then when you put it back in, you put the same one back in the same slot. So try not to jumble them up. So let's go ahead and remove those 6 bolts, and then we'll be right back. Alright, all the bolts are out, so you should be able to grab it and pull it right out. Yeah, make sure you have something under there, because there's still coolant that's coming out of your engine there and there. So here we go. The old one's out. You got a lot of parts here laying around, some tools and belts and hoses. It looks like maybe the O-ring right here does not look very good. It's got a lot of junk in it. Maybe one of these O-rings failed, especially right there. And that's why it was leaking. Well, that's what I'm thinking anyways. Alright. Okay, just one last thing before we put a new water pump on, is there's supposed to be paper gaskets here. Mine didn't look like it had any, but just in case, we're going to take a razor blade and we're going to clean up the mating surface of these spots. So clean them up real good, use some brake cleaner if you need to on both sides, and make sure that it has a good mounting or mating surface before we put the new water pump back on. Alright, so we got our old one and our new one. Just want to make sure that they're both the same. They have the same mounting holes, and everything looks the same, which these do. Some of them come with a new thermostat. This one did not, so I know this one is not very old, so we're just gonna transfer that over to here. It looked like this old one had Velcro gaskets on the back. That's why I didn't have any paper gaskets, but this is actually what failed, the Velcro gasket, because you can see here these are all falling apart. So, yep, this one too. So I'm going to put the gaskets, I'm going to use the gaskets that came with the new one, but we got a new pulley, new water pump here, and it is exactly the same. So I went ahead and put the bolts in, and then I put the gasket over top of it. I'll do the same for this side, and then we'll put it in very carefully and make sure that the gaskets don't fall off, and that way we know that they're lined up correctly and everything is in the spot that it should be. Bolts to 11 foot-pounds. All right. Okay, so everything's torqued down now. Now it's time to start putting the hoses back on. It's also a good time to clear out any debris that might be blocking your radiator from flowing properly. Also, you want to make sure that when you're working, your radiator is exposed right here, and you don't want to bend up the fins. So be careful working around your radiator so you don't bend up the fins on your radiator. Alright, so if you replaced your thermostat housing, you want to torque these down to 11. These are 11 foot-pound. These are 10 millimeter bolts. And then put your lower radiator hose on. After that, you're going to put your tensioner back on. The top two bolts right here, and here are the long bolts, and the bottom one is a shorter bolt. So the two long ones on top, shorter one on the bottom. I don't believe these have a torque spec, or I don't think it matters. Just tighten them up fairly good. You know, don't overdo it to where you break something. All right, next step, you want to put your belt back on. Remember, this is the tensioner, so 15 millimeter to let the tension off. If you're not sure the routing of the belt, if you still have your shroud here, it should tell you how to route your belt, the serpentine belt. So if you're not sure, it goes around the lower pulley, wrap around, the ribs are facing out on your water pump pulley, and then back around over here up to your alternator. The ribs should be down on your alternator, right around, and then the ribs should be down on your tensioner pulley, and then back around where you started. All right, time to put your fan back on. You can just spin it back on by hand, and then once you get it to the end like this, just use whatever method that you use to jam up the pulley from spinning, and then tighten it back down with your adjustable wrench at this big nut right here. All right, once your fan is tightened back up, you're going to install your upper radiator shroud, and if you look, there's a pin right here, and on the other side, see right there, that'll help you line it up. And then once that's lined up, you can put your pop rivets back in. Okay, now reinstall your two 10 millimeter bolts at the top. Here's this one and this one. No real torque spec needed. Just snug them up. After that, upper radiator hose back on. Goes through this clamp right here. Getting real close now. So you have this little tiny hose that we never disconnected it from its source, so we're just going to pop it back in this little bracket here and here. We have another clamp right here. Okay, almost done. We're going to put our intake back on, clamp it back to the air box here, and then the throttle body right there, and then this last clamp there's like a little pin that goes through and holds it tight to the intake. Okay, just put the cover back on. It's just a 10mm bolt right here, and that's the last thing to put back together. All you have left to do is put the coolant back in. Make sure you use the right kind of coolant. This is approved for GM. It's got Dex Cool in it, so make sure that you use the right kind of coolant. All right, once you've topped off your coolant, start your engine up, leave the cap off of this, turn the heater on, let the engine heat up, and then once it's heat up, the thermostat will open. That'll allow coolant to go into the engine and filling that up. So you'll have to fill this up, or at least top it off a couple more times maybe. And then once you start feeling some good heat coming out of your vents inside because you put the heater on, then your coolant system should be fully filled up, and then you can put the cap back on and then take it for a test drive after that. All right, that about wraps it up for me. If this helped you at all or you enjoyed it, please give me a like, give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, give me a thumbs down. I don't care. Please comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, I can try to help you. I'm not a mechanic, but I do a lot of work like this on my own. This actually was a super easy job. It may seem like a lot for some of you. It's not difficult at all. If you have basic hand tools, you can do this job. So don't be afraid to try, give it a shot, and we'll see you on the next one.